Good, Jane. I got myself online. I'm having issues getting a place. So this is a Democracy Now website, and they're interviewing a woman. It's a very good book, Age of Surveillance Capitalism, The Flight for Human and a New Frontier of Power, right? Departs in many ways from the history of market capitalism, which we've never had. But in a fundamental way, it continues with that history. We know that capitalism has evolved by taking things that live outside the market, bringing them into the market, dynamic, transforming them into commodities that can be sold and purchased. So, famously, industrial capitalism claims nature for the market. It is reborn as real estate and land that can be sold and purchased. It claims work for the market, reborn as labor that can be sold and purchased. So surveillance capitalism continues in this tradition, but with a dark twist. In our time, surveillance capitalism claims private human experience for the market dynamic as a free source of raw material that is translated into behavioral data. These data are then combined with advanced computational abilities to create predictions of what you will do, predictions of our behavior, predictions of what we will do soon and later. And these predictions are then sold to business customers in a new kind of marketplace that trades exclusively in human futures. Oops. This was the first invented in the context of my targeted advertising at Google back in 2000, 2001, in the teeth of the financial emergency during the dot-com bust. But the same economic logic has now traveled not only from Google to Facebook and throughout the tech sector, but now throughout the normal economy in virtually every economic action. Digital gangsters. Well, since just about a year ago now, we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of Cambridge Analytical revelations. One of the consequences of those revelations is not only that a lot of us all around the world have been put on alert that all is not well in the digital realm. That's one thing. But the second thing is that, at least in the UK, the government has taken this very seriously. And there's been a parliamentary committee investigating Facebook. This committee was able to get leaked documents, secret documents from Facebook that had not been revealed by the public. And just last week, they issued their 108-page report. It's very powerful, very damning. And among other things, they refer to the Facebook as behaving like a digital gangster because they have understood that Facebook has been essentially stealing. In other words, as I've described, legitimately taking our private human experiences for its production process that creates these predictions of products, which is what they sell and how they make money. The key thing that I want our viewers to know is that the surveillance capitalism doesn't stop at Facebook. And right now, it's hugely positive development that we are looking at Facebook with the kind of security, perhaps moving to finally regulate this corporation, but this is the beginning, not the end, of our challenge. Surveillance capitalism is an economic logic that includes, but movies far beyond Facebook at this point in time. And also, we are going to need social response that addresses, interrupts, and outlaws this new economic logic, not just a single company or not just a couple of companies. Explain this. All right, so well, once you understand that surveillance capitalism is an economic logic, it is not the same as technology. This is one of the big lies that has been perpetrated, that these methodologies are the only way that digital technology can work, that there is an inevitable propaganda that has been fed to us. We need to pull this issue apart. We have digital technology, which we believe would be emphatically empowering, democratizing, and it still can be. In the last 20 years, it has been overtaken, hijacked by an economic logic whose economic imperative put it on a collision course with democracy, both from below and from above. One of the things that surveillance capitalism learned is that the most powerful predictions of human behavior come from actual intervening in our behavior, touching our behavior to nudge the influence, to tune, to herd our behavior towards a commercial outcome. And what this has done is made them take hold of the digital milieu, all of the devices, beginning with our phones and our laptops, but the sensors, facial recognition, and smart dishwashers, and smart television sets, and smart cars, and smart city, all the digital infrastructure now has been taken by the surveillance capitalism as a way to nudge and tune the herd, our behavior towards a guaranteed outcomes. It does this with subliminal cause. It's highly scientific process that it does this in a way that it brags about our always outside of our awareness, so that we have no right of combat. We cannot resist, we cannot say no, we cannot exist. So this is what I call a global means of behavior modification, where the essential, this great digital architecture that, let's take care of this here, over there, okay. Let's see. So this is what I call a global means of behavior modification, where essential, this great digital architecture that we built in order to be an emancipatory and life-giving process for us to help us in our lives, has now become commandeered by surveillance capitalism as a means to modify our behavior towards the commercial ends, which is a direct assault to human autonomy, a direct assault. Surveillance capitalism as means of modifying behavior towards this, which is direct assault to human autonomy, direct assault on our direction rights, a direct assault on whole nations of individual sovereignty. Back in 1970, there was a Senate committee that included people like Edward Kennedy and Sam Erwin. These folks met for many months, and they decided that behavior modification was pernicious action that is a complete defiance of democratic principles. And they decided that no federal money would fund any kind of program based on behavior modification in the prisons, schools, and hospitals today. In the early 2019s, we've just spent the last decades where democracy slept and private sector under aegis of surveillance capital and has been able to command the digital to create literally ubiquitous means of behavior modification with anybody saying no, and what most of us even noticing or understanding what occurred. Facebook, Google, or elephant poachers or personal data is ivory tusks. Well, we've been fed a lot of lies, a lot of euphemisms, a lot of misdirections. Those are some of the strategies that have allowed surveillance capitalism to succeed. One of them. That's, maybe that's making you dizzy. How about this? Everybody has heard the glitch. Let's see. Well, we've been fed a lot of lies, a lot of euphemisms, a lot of misdirections. Those are some of the strategies that have allowed surveillance capitalism to succeed. One of them is the notion that if it's free, you're the product, right? Everybody has heard that cliche. I comfort that had I comfort come confront I confront that head on. Once you understand that we are the regime of the economic logic, not a technology. Technology itself, it's like going backwards. Like we're in Wonderland. Now we are backwards through the looking glass and we come out in a place called reality where we can start to see clearly. And when we start to see clearly, what we see is, first of all, the services are not free. We think the services are free, but they think that we're free. We're the free raw material. We think that we're the product, but they understand that we are not the product. We are simply the free source of raw material, like those elephant tusks, everything about us, like what our problems are, what our real needs are, what our real concerns are. Everything about us is ignored. They have no interest in us. It doesn't matter if we are happy or sad. It doesn't matter if we're doing well or poorly. It only matters that we do things in ways that they can escape. It only matters that we do things in ways that they can scrape the experience and turn it into data. There are a few other interesting lies here. We think we're searching. Google is actually searching us. We think that these companies have privacy policies. Those policies are actually surveillance policies. We're told that we have nothing to hide and we have nothing to fear. The fact is, what they don't tell us and what we are forgetting, that if you have nothing to hide, then you are nothing, because everything about us that makes us our unique identities, that gives us our individual spirit, our personality, our sense of freedom of will, freedom of action, a sense of our right to our own futures. That's what comes from within. Those are our inner resources. That's our private realm. And it's intended to be private for reasons, because it's how it grows and flourishes and turns us into people who assert moral authority, an essential element of a flourishing democracy society. So we're living in a time right now where every week there are serious mini scandals. And this is one of the mini scandals this past week. there were several, and this was one of them. So what happens is we get mobilized around a mini scandal. If you understand surveillance capitalism and you understand its economic imperatives, that it needs always to scale by behavior data, and it needs scope, varieties, and behavior data, and it needs kind of a behavior data that comes from actual intervening and influence our actions, as we talked about moments ago. Then all of these mini scandals are utterly predictable as a routine humdrum, please pass the salt everyday options of self-representing surveillance capitalism. So these apps that Wall Street Journal researches, and I cover this in depth in the book, just about every app that you download is shunting your data to a third party. Virtually every app is doing that. When you look at those third parties, the two Goliaths among the third parties, Facebook and Google, most of the sites, URLs, these data gets shunted to are owned by Facebook and Google. So what it means is that you download an app, many of these apps, we use them to help us with our daily life we have needs that we need, so no one really helping us with our lives. Certainly our institutions are not. So we have apps that help us with our health, help us with our fitness, help us keep track of our menstrual cycle, help us think about our mental health. These very personal information going into these apps. It does not stop there, all going to a third party. At every stage of this research, there are times when I would be sitting in my study and okay, we get the picture, right? Right? So, yeah, what do you think? Anyway, so, I find this is a very interesting and important little subject matter on what are we doing here, and where are we going, and, how do we frame the alternative aesthetic when it comes to this, And so Jamie Hilliard somehow got knocked off this chat, right? I didn't do it. I don't even know how to do it. And then he said, "Oh, just go back and again. Hi, gang. I'm your Sensei Al Bob. This is Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. It's a show to entertain. It has nothing to do with trying to prove anything or tell you what to do or what to think. That's pretty much up to you. That's what a griot does. Tells you a story, and then, you kind of go from there. So anyway, Jamie's, so I went back and I looked at 40. I have over 450 shows. Right? Been doing this since May 1st of last year, and I have 450 shows. And so I kind of thumbed through them and stopped every so often to look for Jamie, because he said if I could find him on the chat, I could just hit the little three dots and unblock him. Well, he was gone. He's not on, I looked at 40 across the 450 and didn't find him. Now, I would hope that you guys could go look at those other shows, because I'm not going to be knocking off 2 a day of these, right? I may go to 1 a week because I'm getting tired. It takes a lot of energy. It was easy for me to do at the school, but I'm no longer able to do it there. And so, I'm more of a homeless person now than I was earlier. And hopefully spring will come sooner rather than later, though this week's supposed to be really fracking cold. And I have all of $90 to my name. And so if anybody wanted to send some money by Western Union, do so. Al Dimartino, Roanoke, Virginia, and then get a hold of me at my due to wake 42 and tell me the tracking number. That would be great. Call me later. Okay, I will. That many would be a good idea. Not to burn yourself out. Yep. So I'm going to take it easy for the next week or two because I have no place to do it except in this, library or, like where I did it this morning at the breakfast spot. And the only comment I got was, "Hey, look at how funny he is, the fool is eating his breakfast." Well, I am a fool, and I was eating my breakfast, so... So, anyway. But, I look at a lot of other people's YouTubes, and there's some really great YouTubes up there. I mean, Mr. Research has a great YouTube, and other people have some good ones, but by far the majority is like, my present guest host, JB, look at virtually every time he sits himself in front of my phone, he says the same thing, and I'm not going to repeat it. But so does the majority of the people on YouTube. They say the same thing. They're not. I mean, it's. I mean, yesterday I was in the library here, reading something, and awesome. And upstairs, this is a great library. It's got a restaurant in it. You can eat it almost anywhere. They got a kids section. They got a teenage section. They got a quiet. It's really, there's a lot of computers that I just read off of, and it's really a great place. It's back when I lived here and paid property tax here. I was happy that my money went to, and they built 3 of these around the county. So that, the government can do good things. Anyway, so I was sitting upstairs, and parents were waiting. One of the kids were playing, because they have a big, virtual reality room upstairs. And the kids were, they kind of let them go wild and jump up and down and be kids, tell them to shut up and stuff. And so I was talking to the parents, and then the kids would come out. And it basically broke down into 2 types of kids. Kids who were totally insulated in themselves, meaning they had their own little world on the inside. And as a little kid, that was me. I was all about electricity. I was, living, thinking, breathing electricity, making all kinds of, I was trying to build a time machine. I built a bubble chamber, which is 1 step below a particle accelerator, and I did that when I was 10. I built myself a 2 Tesla coil, and a Tesla is measured in watts, kilowatts, megawatts, gigawatts, Teslas, and a Tesla is 1 billion volts, right? And I built a Tesla coil which was 2 Teslas. So much juice that it created its own electromagnetic field that the people at Kennedy could register on their radar screen. So they came and visited me, and when they knocked on the door, my grandma answered, and little Italian lady, "What do you want?" And it was like guys, suits and vests and guns. They thought, this was the 50s. They thought we were some kind of Russian spies or something. Anyway, they came in, and it was just my grandma and me, and I took them down and gave them a sign. It was like a sign. "See, this is what I made." And the guys who were engineers from the FCC were like, "You made this?" I said, "Oh yeah, I got it." And I showed them the Scientific America that I read the article, and it didn't say how to make one. It just said this is what it did. And then I experimented until I created my own hollow core, um, you know, Tesla coil. Well, you kind of can. Please, if I could do it at 10, with stuff I found in the street, pretty much. I mean, there are so many YouTubes up there that go on about it, and there's a couple good ones of people showing, you know, you know, whatchamacallit, gravel magnetic propulsion. There's a guy who makes a thing out of balsa wood and mylar and a 9-volt battery. People, he turns a 9-volt battery on and the thing hovers in the air, kind of floats around, and that's just balsa wood, mylar, and a 9-volt battery. So, I mean, anti-gravity is a lot like airplanes in that, an airplane wing is shaped in such a way that the pressure underneath one side of the wing is greater than the other. Ergo, the airplane rises, right? And jet engines don't really burn the fuel. They get the airplane going a certain speed, and then it puts why jet engines are so big? They're fan jet engines. And why a fan? Because they have all these layers of fans that compress the air and then blow it through the engine. And once they get up to the height and at cruising altitude, hardly uses any fuel at all. And the only real fuel it uses is like moving it down the runway and getting up to that cruising altitude. And there's so many other like electric current. Back in the day when I was a lineman in the early 70s, they had these compression capacitors, and they weren't transformers, they compression capacitors that would balance the load on the polyphase. When you look up at a telephone pole that has 3 wires and a ground, that's a polyphase coming off the generator, right? And high voltage goes from the generator to a distribution point, which is that thing that looks like a erector set and transformers, and it breaks it down from high voltage down into lower voltage, and then it's just distributed through your town or neighborhood. And if you balance that load, it hardly uses any electricity. But the utilities stop balancing the load, and the electricians, when I was, an apprentice with Grandpa's stall, I was, basically, when you terminate in a circuit breaker panel, you make sure, you have 2 buses, A, B, single phase, 220. Each one of those buses is 110, and you got the neutral, and you got the ground. The ground and the neutral, kind of the same. It's the drain for the current. The neutral is an isolated, because it's carrying the current back to the generator, theoretically. And the ground is the safety, So there's a short someplace that'll ground out and put the circuit breaker instead of you getting electrocuted. And so that's basically how it's done. So if you put those circuits on those 2 buses and you balance the load, like, someplace where you're going to use a toaster oven base, balanced with where you're going to use the hair dryer, that kind of stuff, and lighting and this and that, and the 220s, you balance that load, your electric bill will be half of it. A lot of these guys just put it on one bus and that's it. And then your electric bill is twice what it should be. And just simple things like this, I mean, they had diodes back in the day. They had fluorescent tubes. They had neon tubes. Before Edison, Tesla had neon tubes lighting up his place without any wires. He just had an induction coil. The Chrysler building was totally wired with induction coil at the top and bottom, and that's why it was stainless steel. It was a Faraday cage, and that's why it had little antennas on the side. It was, absorbing the ether of the planet. The Chrysler building was a ZPU, zero-point energy module, So, but Mr. Morgan went and said, hey, that's a great building, Mr. Chrysler, but, take all the Tesla stuff out and put Edison wires in, because if you don't, I got these pictures of you fooling around with animals, and I'll give it to my friends, Mr. Hearst and Mr. Pulitzer. And both those guys were basically like, the Inquirer, oh, I won a Pulitzer Prize. Well, Mr. Pulitzer, it bled, it led. I mean, what we're facing right now is the same as it always been. It's just digitized. It's just faster. It's just quicker. It's like not as easy to be spotted. And there's only two of you watching, you know. So I'm gonna go, unless you guys got something deep for me to think about. Free energy will be there if you demand it, if you go study it and you go create it. Everything will occur if you, within your community, start, creating a need, a want, If you start creating look what happened to Nancy Pelosi. A handful of 10-year-olds cornered her in her office and held her like, why aren't you doing something about the environment? We're going to have to grow up in this cesspool. And they're right. Now, what they're wanting is like the Green New Deal is just another scam. It doesn't put any onus on the corporate state. The real deal is the corporate state. We live in a corporate oligarchy. It'd be nice to have capitalism. Capitalism is supposed to be competition. We don't have any competition. 4 or 5 corporations all own media, period. And all those guys are on the boards of each other's companies. It's an oligarchy, We have a cabal of the hidden hand. And they want to get rid of us. So if you, just keep, and only two, now there's only one person on. Mute. You're one. Oh no, there's another one there. Jane, you still there? You still there, Jane? Oh, Mr. Forever. Anyway. Oh, there's 3 now. But this is something we all have to bring to our communities. Today, I was at that place having breakfast, right? So I had to kill 5 hours because I woke up early to make a stew for John and I. And really nice food. Johnny's, oh, this is amazing. Oh, it's like the first time he ever ate my food. And now he's scared that I'm poisoned, well, I have no money, so I have to kind of use food over and over and over again. It's still good. Actually, it tastes better when you cook it over and over. And he's like, oh, Danica would never do that. It has to be brand new. It has to be organic. Oh, give me a break. That organic is the same crap as Kroger's. Same company, same truck stops at Kroger's and then goes to the co-op. It's not like the co-op is growing it on their farm. And everyone is deluded to believe their own little thing, If you listen to John got 61 people watching, I got 3. And John pretty much said the same thing he's said for the last 3 years. My wife, she took them to Texas, and all I want is to be happy. Well, he doesn't tell you the real story of how that came. And, it's always, everybody is responsible for their life. What happened to you is not because somebody else, it's not Daddy did it to you. Oh, it's a cabal of people in town that, or my parents, convinced. No, sorry, not going to happen. Everything in our lives, I can only speak for myself. Everything in my life, pretty much, I kind of went down that road. And, more or less, it's been pretty good, I've had a pretty good life. I've had amazing experiences, because I kind of I chose, instead of having one career and doing it for my whole life, yes, I could have made a lot of money doing this or that, or this thing or that thing, but I didn't. I just, kept trying to, they all kind of connected. The dot says, why I'm a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist, because I, for 30 years, studied all those things. And, it kind of kept being a positive thing, meaning, you know, and that one thing led to the next, the next, the next. I always had a gig, but now that I'm, the aging scholar, nobody wants somebody who isn't gonna toe their line, who wants to just tell them the truth. I mean, nobody wants to. Large corporations to individual people don't want to hear the truth. I myself am forced to, hear the truth for myself because I'm living it, I had to lose 250 pounds or I was going to die, and that was the truth, I had to go back into my aesthetic ways of meditating 5 to 10 times a day, or I wasn't going to be able to walk or my body work. Last week I spent most of the week in doctor's offices. It was my 6-month checkup, and as soon as spring comes, I'm going to be in the deep green where I have no medical anything. So I just want to make sure that everything's running right. And again, I got to get my legs were hurting, and my podiatrist said, "Oh, you just need a new pair of shoes." Well, man, I had to go see 20 different doctors and fill out 40 forms to get a pair of shoes. Right? And the shoes I'm going to get, I could buy in Walmart for $19, but they say they cost, $400 to $600. I could put Dr. Scholl's Inter's bingos in there, and it probably would work just as good as the things they took a mold of my foot for. But it took a whole week to see all those guys. Well, I made them look at me in every which way, so it was worth my going. And, I'm in fairly good shape for, as my, endocrinologist keeps, kidding me that I'm the healthiest dead guy he knows. And my podiatrist and my bone doctor can't believe I can walk. Because they go, "You got no bones in your feet. How do you walk?" Because I meditate 5 to 10 times a day. And, life turns out pretty good day by day. The biggest, thing that's a bummer to me is that John goes, "Why do you go down every day you leave?" Well, because if I didn't, I would be sitting in front of, no matter where I go. If I'm in bed asleep, John will come into that room. You've seen it. And he will, stand right there with the door open, the cold air coming in, going on about everything he goes on about, And again, he represents the canary in the coal mine. He is, just look at that guy. He is what, more than half of the human race is going on, especially the half that have a lot of stuff. The people who are, starving in, Yemen, or, have been bombed into non-existence in Syria, they're not going on about that John's going on about, Am I going to make good money? No, they're not going on about that. But a lot of people who, so yesterday, so I saw a whole bunch of kids, and like I said, they broke down into 2 groups. So this is a pretty affluent library in a pretty affluent neighborhood. So all those kids are pretty affluent. Meaning they got an iPhone. Meaning this smartphone here is basically a paper cup with a string on it. And luckily, it didn't die. I just had to bring it to somebody who kind of revived it. And then I copied down everyone's phone number. So, because everything was in this phone. So, anyway. And, I have a semblance of JB's, constant resign, but that's only because I'm exposed to it day in, day in, and day out, day in, and day out. With the constant talk about anxiety, at any moment he could throw me out. He'd already done it 26 times, and it's every time it kind of gets towards being like this whole week's supposed to be 9 degrees. If he throws me out there, I'm a dead guy, because I really have no place to go. And so talk about high anxiety, that Mel Brooks movie, high anxiety, but I don't worry about it, And I come down to this library to read things like I just read you, and to get a respite from John's, constant, day in, day out. And you guys seem to love it. You kind of watch it. I mean, like I said, he did a live chat last night, and 61 people watched it, And they were like, "Oh, so sympathetic," which is, John's a great guy. He has a great heart. He's a smart guy, talented guy. He came from a very affluent family, and he's always had, he's got, college degrees up the yin yang, And he matriculated, meaning he paid a lot of money for it. Me, I got a lot of degrees, but I didn't matriculate. I just happened to be in a place where they needed me, and they needed me to have a degree, ergo they gave me one. Yep, a little Stanley Kubrick, yeah, with light up above. Yep, yep. And I got my 1970s tie-dye. I used to make tie-dye. I had a girlfriend who was a big Dead fan, and we were on tour. I would make sand candles and tie-dye, and she would make sandwiches and herbal potpourris. We used to do we'd go to a gathering and sell in the parking lot, make $1,000 easy. It's really not hard to make money if you're having a good time, and you got a product that somebody wants, And she was really the businessman, not me. She knew people who made stuff like tie-dye this and tie-dye that, and just t-shirts in general. And we would buy their seconds, and those goofy Dead kids would buy them. I mean, we got one like a thing like this, a sweatshirt with a hood. I mean, this is from the 1970s. This is one of my last remnants of that. And we would buy these. We'd buy a couple hundred of them, but we'd buy them for 50 cents a piece, and then sell them for $20. And we did silk screen, so we'd like silk screen whatever show that was, So, and it was a great process. I used to just take a picture, negative, and I could use that negative to make a silk screen negative, and then we could just squeegee it onto the back of one of these things. Yes, I found this last year, and it was still in a plastic bag in a box. And that's my last, and I never wore it. I was unpacking things because, I've been on the homeless realm, and I got stuff all over the universe, people's basements, garages, attics, and I've been trying to gather it. I got a ton of stuff at the school still. Anyway, and that's my life, and a lot of people could be super anxious about it, to have to like sleep in your car for the next few months until it gets warm enough to stay in the woods. A lot of people couldn't handle even the I'm so anxious, and the last, here we go again. And that's like the last time I'm really gonna do it, unless John jumps in the frame. I mean, I really can't do it at the school anymore, so probably not going to see John Boy on the screen here. But he has a big following. He's, I don't know, 30,000 subscribers, and so therefore he does get 60 to 70 people every time he goes on to say the same thing over and over again. When I try to sit down and meditate and think about a subject matter that I think is kind of important to the human race, and I want to kind of, live chat about it where people will, there's one person here. And it's Rab. How you doing, Rab? Hi, Bob. Boop, 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 boop. What is bath? Bad. Was that bad good or bad bad? I remember with Michael Jackson's, it's bad. To me, nothing's bad. I don't measure things in bad or good. It's irrelevant. That's just somebody's opinion. And, I can get huffy, I guess is the right word. My mother would use that word, huffy. Don't get huffy with me. And But overall, I don't think anyone's out to get me. You know, whatever bad choices I've made them, not somebody else. You know, and majority of those, you know, within the construct of everything I experience, you know, like I got a ticket, and you could, but I went to court. I did all that stuff, and I met people in the court that I wouldn't have met if I hadn't got that ticket. And those were really well worth meeting. You know, they had this guy, and they had that guy, and they had this person, and they had that person, and, you know, people I didn't know, but, you know, oh, I heard about you. Somebody told me about you, you know, and I reintroduced myself in the political structure of this city and county because I got that ticket. And on the bottom line, it all worked out, you know, and it made me a safer driver, which, I mean, these are all good things, right? So, no matter what happens to you, and so I got real, you know, I nearly, you know, I died in a plate of spaghetti 6 years ago, and I've come back from that. I'm a much stronger, better person for it, right? So, and I'm, you know, basically, meditating so much that my dream time is, you know, my connection with the higher realms are like way, way better than they were when I was Mr. Hedonist, that's for sure. And I mean, I was still connected, otherwise I wouldn't be able to have done the things I did for the desperate lawyers. But, you know, there's always a positive, you know? And the more you're positive, the more the positive's going to be. Meaning, so I care about everyone. I interact with everyone on the most positive way. I don't see anyone as negative. I mean, there were a lot of people yesterday that had problems. I talked to them. I helped them. I actually said things to them that made a big difference. That was a good thing. And their kids, you know, so the kids basically broke down into two groups. And if you go watch John's ex, Danica's channel, and her kids are in it, those are the two groups. They actually represent three groups. The dark-haired boy, and the light-haired boy, and the little girl. And they come from that social group. They have everything they want. You take a look, you know, when Danica shows her house, like toys everywhere, food, you know, just anything they want, they got, you know. And just go watch her channel and see those kids. I won't make any comments. But they represent those three groups of young folks who are being brought up. They have known nothing but the digital platform as their parents. You know, their parents are out of the loop, kind of. You know, so go take a look at that. I mean, that's why I keep saying John is the canary in the social coal mine. He really does represent what's going on, and that's why it's. I guess that's why so many people every time he does whatever he does, watches him. You know, because he is. It's like that. What was the movie about the guy who he was a reality show and he didn't even know he was a reality show, right? And the interesting thing, you know, so you know, John's living that life, and yet he wants to be the rock star. He wants to be the famous. Well, he really, if you want to be the rock star and the famous person, you have to give all those people. I worked in that industry. All those people had to give up their life. They had no life, right? They had no personality. They had. I mean, I worked just a little bit in the movie industry as a master electrician, but I found it so tedious. I mean, I got paid ridiculous. Of all the times I ever got paid for anything, because I was I was in Local 3, IBEW, I was in ABIT, IATSE. I had the three big ones. And I was the gen operator. I mean, without that thing working, the movie didn't work. So they paid me a lot of money. And then I had nothing to do once I got it raging. And not really. I mean, there are dark magicians, you know, people who are doing, you know, selling their souls for material trinkets. Anyway, and that's what I saw, you know, people, Hollywood, every magic wand that is made from holly, the wood of the holly bush, holly wood. It's all that magic. It's dark magic. Look at Disney. Look at all those entities in the movie biz, and just start looking at it. I mean, YouTube has a ton of stuff on all of this. I'm not gonna go on and on about it, but go do your homework. And around here, what has really happened around here is this whole area used to be extraordinarily vibrant, energetic. There's some real serious ley lines going through here. And the deepest magic being done here is being done by the hidden hand. I mean, all the mountains of the Blue Ridge, the Appalachian, are just honeycombed with underground bases. I mean, just because we're so close to DC, they got all these underground tubes that come straight to these underground places. So this part of the planet is going to be obliterated if anyone ever lights it off, right? Here in the West, around Colorado. So that's the only kind of magicians that are here, those kind of guys. And they're, pretty dark, pretty dank. And so what again, go back to my one of my past videos. I did a very good one because, George and Inga found this place, and it was still, up until the time Inga died, this place was still pretty energetic. And the fact she sold me the school, and I used it as my, esoteric school. But the people showed up were, oh, I'm going to give you $300 and you give me a piece of paper that certifies I'm a shaman. It's like, no, it kind of doesn't work that way. Nobody wanted to do the work. No one wanted to meditate. No one wanted to do ceremony. No one wanted to do all of those things, Anyway, when George and Inga kind of moved up here, they cut a road to get up here because the people who lived up here were black Cherokees. And they were hiding in plain sight. They had little farms, and they would take wagons down with the horse, and they would sell their goods in Grandin, and people would buy them, and then they'd come back on their horse. But those guys died off. George and Inga buy their property from them, and in the early, I think late 70s, 58 to 61, they moved up here. And so, they cut into the forest. And they did it in such a way where these hills were, and you could see the roots and the fungi and the flora and the fauna in the ground, what the interconnection of the fairyland, and they cut right into the fairyland. And so when I showed up here, the school was just kind of teetering, and then I showed up with my dogs. I thought, wow, finally somebody who knows somehow. And I did ceremony up there, and I, brought it back. Hey, buddy, bud. And, and it was very energetic. And for about 3 years, it was just fun. All of my buddies who I had gone to shamanic schools with, lived on, the people who I was with, the shaman in Putney, Vermont, the people I knew from Ithaca, New York, the people I knew from the Four Corners, indigenous people, and people had studied with them, and my teacher, Chief Two Trees, and his students. And there was a pretty interesting group of people in Lynchburg at that time too. And so we, it was an interesting time for about 3 years. And I tried to have a school, but like I said, the majority of the people who would show up, I mean, these people who I knew, would come and be guest speakers, teachers, and different people would send me students. Oh, these people want to learn this. Well, they'd show up, and all they wanted was to spend a weekend and pay me $300, and I would give them a certificate saying that they was a shaman. And I would say, no, I'm sorry. You have to do this work. You have to experience it. You have to have, as my teacher in New Mexico was, do you have a vision? And like the other night, John was like bemoaning again. I said, John, let's try and meditate once more. And I put him, started off and really had my shamanic hat on and had the intent going, and he went into state. And he was doing the process really pretty good for about 10 minutes, and I got him all the way into you know because he's like totally whack on the idea of me coming back to my dead wife, who's not, I mean, again, you have to go to X-rated, xratted.blogspot.com and read that story. It's the story, first one. And in the beginning, I talk about a rainbow gathering, and then I drop a couple of short stories in there. And one of them was the day my second wife died. And I'm not going to explain it all to you. You have to go and read it. Anyway, John, I tell that story once to him. It's, oh, maybe he'll get back. He has this kind of thing about wanting people to be with their, like, his Danica, right? He has waited 11 years and she's told him to get lost for 11 years. And he's, oh, she'll come back, And no, my wife died for a reason. We weren't supposed to, we were brought together for shamanic reason. We did that, but we felt so totally in love. We didn't break up like our teachers, our master, Akasha K, who said, no, you guys can't stay. You got to go do other stuff. We want you to do other stuff. And so to break that bond, she just one day woke up with cancer and then within a week died in the ICU. And so I won't tell you anymore. You have to read the story on how she came. Anyway, so John was like, I want to see that. You'll tell me how I can get back with that. And I said, okay. So I put him there. And basically what happened was, I brought him to that point, but I stopped just like I do with you guys. I give you a guided meditation, bring you to a place, and then I be quiet, I meditate myself, and you guys have your own experience, right? And so I wanted him to have that. And what happened was his psyche, his id, broke the connection because Akash K was telling him things that he didn't want to hear. I didn't hear anything. Well, I was kind of listening in. No, I heard. And the guy was saying, no, you got to move on. You got to do, you've got other things to do. And if not, you're going to be not happy-chappy. And John didn't want to hear that. And John is getting a little upset with me because I can't just go along to get along. I say, John, listen, you have to make a change here or else this isn't good. And yes, he's a lot better than he was, but he's still right there. Yeah, exactly. So, and again, the story has many sides. It always does. That's why I'm your, shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic anthropologist. Alchemist, and and the thing is, the only story we can tell is our own. As your griot, I tell you stories that are my own, that are there to enlighten you. I do it shamanically in a way that I tell you this story, and then you kind of have a raison d'etre yourself. And so, that's how it goes. And I read, you can go back a few nights, and that story about my second wife, I read out loud. So you go, you can hear it. I said it out loud. And I would suggest, because I'm going to do this less and less, I have over 450 shows, each one over 2 hours long. So, and some of them 4 hours long. So, if we break down the math, and this is how you do math, you don't do it, perfect. You don't have to go to the, so 400 times 2, I've got a good 800 hours of programming there. And you guys there at the Hidden Hand and, the powers that shouldn't be, and all you AIs watching us, come and give me a job, man. I could really, use a job, and I could be a spokesman for you guys. So you can have your way, but don't have to barbecue the planet. Don't have to kill, you know, 6 billion people. You don't have to do that. I'm sorry. You don't have to take, you know, 5 million people every year, abscond with them, and, do really nasty things to them. You don't have to do this. You don't. You can be in charge. I sure don't want to be in charge. Most people don't want to be in charge, but they do want to, have. I mean, we live in a planet of abundance. You don't. I mean, I just read you a thing about how they're commoditizing our experience on the digital platform, and they're just going to own us. They already do. So, what's your take on all of this? Yeah, exactly. That's what my stories do. They're there to like sharpen your pencil. Baba dooba. What was it like when I was? Well, again, I was a little peanut. I was really short, so my view was like always up, and there was always tall people around me. From you know infancy, the first thing I did when I could crawl was stick a knife in an outlet. And since I was an infant, I was a floating ground, so I was getting that nice little charge. Have any of you guys ever touched a electrified cow fence and done the line where one person's brave and because it's just the initial shock. Well, once you get the shock, it's not that bad, and then somebody touches them, somebody touches them. Once you get 4 or 5 people, you are this thing, and you're not got your feet in water, and you got pretty insulated boots or shoes. You get this kind of tingle that's sexual. And so I did that when I was an infant and stuck me in there and just went, and my sister always ratted me out, Albie Pluggy Boom Boom. That's how I got that nickname, Albie and Pluggy Boom Boom. When you read my stuff, you'll see I use that as a nom de plume sometimes. And so anyway, I was like, ooh. And my mom, big tall woman that she was, came running over in her leather shoes, rubbing against the woolen rug, and grabbed me. And she got a supercharged shot and blew her across the room and broke her arm. And then she took me and put my crib upside down, and I was like jailed, for a good. And I mean, that was about when my grandma said, "Okay, I'm taking this one," and set him, I was like Free Willy. So, and my grandpa, he loved every gadget there was, and so he died about the month I was born, or second, either before I was born or right around when I was born. That's why I'm named after him. I'm named after both my grandfathers, Albert and William. And so she had a room full of his stuff, and I just took it apart and plugged it in and blew it up. And so as a kid, and it was like 1950s, right? And I was, in, Harlem, New York, basically. And also in Freeport, which was like this other very strange Harlem, New York, because it was all entertainers, all people who were vaudeville stars. Anyway, so I was in this very rarefied environment of people who did all kinds of really, everyone was stepping up, trying to do better, not get over, but do better, right? And it was quite interesting, and so that's what. And my grandma, so I was a hyperactive kid. They had no drugs. She walked me like 100 blocks, and once I could really walk. She walked me everywhere. We went to all the museums. We went to, got on trolley cars. This is back in the day when they had trolley cars. They don't have that anymore. Used to be able to take a trolley from Long Island, from Freeport all the way through Brooklyn and Queens into Manhattan, into where you would get onto a subway or a bus or a ferry. They actually had ferries. All the streets in Lower Manhattan have streets that line up in Brooklyn with the same name, like Reed and Green, and streets like that. And they had ferries back in the day before all the bridges going back and forth. And now they had the bridges once I came, but they still had the trolley. They ripped up the trolley in '60 or '59, but they still had it when I was a kid. And it was great to go at that slow speed of the trolley, maybe 10, 15 miles an hour, for all these towns on the sun. It ran on the Sunrise Highway, right in the middle. And it just went right into Brooklyn and, through Queens into Brooklyn. And then you got either on a bus or a subway. And my grandma would take me all over New York City. So by the time my parents moved into New York when I was about 10, I could go anywhere on my own, not a problem, you know. So the New York City was and when I was 9, I kept blowing things up in my parents' apartment, and my mom walked me to Grandpa Stoll's shop on 3rd Avenue. Do something with this boy. Then I had a job at 9, right? And I had this authority, this man who he was the first master electrician in the United States. He started the original International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers and Local 3 in New York, and the IATSE and the IBEW, and also NABED, right? So he started them. He was Grandpa Stoll. He had keys. He had this room full of keys. He wired the subways, the Empire State Building, Chrysler, you name it, he wired it. And everyone owed him a favor. So I would just, for the first 3 years working there, my job was to walk around with Grandpa Stoll and make sure he didn't walk in front of a bus. I was like 10, 11. But by the time I was 12, 13, I was a pretty good electrician. By the time I was 14, they sent me out on my own to do stuff. I mean, by the time I was 11, I went off with the guys on projects, when Grandpa Stoll didn't want me or didn't need me or he was doing something else, which was about 2/3 of the time I was always, and so he taught me everything. He taught me, that geometry was the only math, the rest are a hoax. He taught me all these really great things. And like I said, everyone knew him, everyone owed him a favor. And he introduced me to my next levels of mentors, like Madame Olga Kluber. So I was this little peanut of a guy. I was always short. I was always the kid. Everyone called me the kid. And until I hit 14 and I went to the seminary, and man, I shot up like I went up to the height I am now, 5'11" and 3/4, almost 6 foot. So I went from being like 5'2" to 5'11" 3/4 in about a year. And, I put on muscle mass, and I'm a lot like all my brothers and sisters are very much like my dad, Italian, curly hair, darker complexion. Me, boy, am I my mom. I'm German, I'm Irish, I got blue eyes, fair skin, I had blonde hair. I mean, I still kind of have, this was the color of my hair right there, kind of a whitish blonde. And it's straighter than straight hair, you can still see. And my mom always thought it was funny that this was all curly and this is like pubic hair. Anyway, so I had and my parents were entertainers. My dad, both of my parents came from different worlds, but knew lots of people who would come to these parties, my godfather is a cardinal, and my mother, her German side is Steinbeck. So Shine Steinbeck was my second cousin. He used to come to Thanksgiving dinner and to some of their cocktail parties, and he would bring other literary guys, I met all these guys when I was, from 9 to 14. Then I got to know them, and then I had friendships with them on my own, reason why Robert Merton, I think so. The guy, No Man's an Island, Catholic priest, wrote all these amazing theologic books. He became a Catholic because my mom was a Catholic, and he wanted to date her. And she said, I can't. Thomas Merton. Tommy, I can't date you. You're not even a Catholic. So he became a Catholic, and then he fell in love with Jesus, and he tried to marry because he was such a theologian and a scholar that he realized that Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, and Shintoism were kind of the same thing. And he was trying to marry them together in the Catholic Church. He wrote all these books that were really popular, sold millions, and so the Catholic Church let him do that because they made money off him. But once he started making a movement of changing the dogma of the church, they killed him in Tibet, you know. So I had all these people in my childhood, and I just kind of, my brothers and sisters couldn't, they were teenagers by that time, and they were like doing teenager thing. Me, I was like sitting and listening to these guys' conversations. So that's what I grew up with. That's why I'm your sensei, Al Bob. You know? Boop-a-doop-boop-boo. Well, kind of. Free speech, kind of. We are forced to self-censor ourselves, right? I mean, John's a good example. He's totally self-censors himself. Gab and dissenter. Okay, I'll do that. So you guys keep, and if you can send me links on my, the Dude Awake 42 Gmail, that's the easiest for me. I mean, I can look things up and, trying to type them in. I mean, a bunch of you guys set things up for me, and I still couldn't even enter into them because I couldn't put in my. I kept putting in my, Gmail account. Not valid. Yeah, I'm related to Giant Stein. He's my second cousin. Yeah. Well, let's see. You know, John. John Steinbeck wrote lots of books. The Old Man and the Sea. What other ones? Come on, Jane, you know who they are. I'm blanking. The one about the Spanish-American War. He wrote a lot of books. Travels with Charlie, Mice and Men. Okay, that was a good one. That was a good one. You know, Grapes of Wrath. That was I can, always see Fonda in that at the end of that movie. You always see me. I'm that guy on the line. I'm the person who does this. You know, it's a great. That movie was pretty amazing. And all those actors who who did those movies like Fonda and Jimmy Stewart and Gregory Peck and Kirk Douglas. It's like they were all, and all the movie stars and musicians today, they're all MK Ultra. I mean, they have no Cary Grant. Go read his book because he goes on that. He was a poor guy from England. He was a juggler. He came here, really handsome. He bumped into, oh man, let me take you to Hollywood. They put him on the thing, and he was Cary Grant. And I think he had a very Reginald Pinball was his name from England, but he turned him into Cary Grant, and he did that to the point where why he was so good at what he was, is that he had no id or ego. He didn't even know who he was. And it wasn't until he was in his 50s, and he had 3 or 4 pretty amazing hot starlet wives, and he married this one in the 60s, and he did like hundreds of acid trips, little bits, not like, but little bits, and it like broke him through to who he was. And I think I told you that story. I met Cary Grant at a cocktail party, and he was sitting on a sofa, and nobody was paying any attention to him because he wasn't talking. He was just sitting there, and this is way before cell phones. He wasn't. He was just looking around. He was observing everyone, and he was sitting. There was like the cheese plate and the fruit plate was on the coffee table right in front of him. and I had my little drink, and I sat down and said, "Hey, you don't mind if I sit here and nosh?" And I had like plastic bags in my pocket. I was like taking the cheese and putting it in plastic bags and putting it. That's what my grandma did. And he was starting to chuckle. He goes, "So you must be an artist." And I go, "Why does it show?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, starving artist. That's kind of what you are." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "That's pretty perceptive of you." And so we started talking about perception. This guy was, and we started talking about, Thomas Merton and, different philosophic points of view that I was reading at the time, and he had read them, and we had a great, great, great conversation. And so, the night wears on, the people kind of leave. It's about time for us to go. We've been talking for hours. And so we get up and we walk out, and our host was saying, "See you later, Carrie." And the person who invited me goes, "You going with him?" I go, "Yeah, yeah." He said, "Well, watch out. That's Cary Grant." I said, "What do you mean, watch out?" He goes, "Well, what do you mean? No, he's a great guy." So we walked out. When we walked, down Fifth Avenue a little bit to the Oak Room in the Waldorf Astoria, and had a couple cocktails and talked some more. He said, "Well, I'm staying here. I'm going upstairs." He goes, "You probably live downtown." I said, "Yep, yep." He goes, "Well, hope to see you again." I said, "Well, how are you going around?" He goes, "Well, I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm just here for a TV show, which I already did." And I goes, "Oh, okay." And that was really the only, we didn't really carry on anything. It wasn't like he had Facebook or something. But I had a nice evening with Cary Grant. And then before we left, he goes, "So you know who I am?" And I go, "Yeah, you're Carrie." He goes, "You know who I am?" I go, "No, who are you?" "You're Carrie." And I said, "Well, neither of us. I kind of twigged you're an actor. You kind of twigged I'm an artist. But then we talked about everything other than that. We didn't talk about ourselves, really. We didn't tell our stories." He goes, "What?" And that's why I enjoy this conversation so much. I don't talk about myself. Everyone wants me to talk about me, and I don't find myself very interesting. And this is one of the more interesting conversations I've had. I wish I lived in this town so I could have more of this. I goes, "Well, I'm not going to California anytime," because I live in L.A. or in California, Malibu, wherever you say he lived. And he goes, "This was perfect, perfect evening." He goes, "I'm Cary Grant. Good to meet you." And I still didn't know who Cary Grant was. That mind didn't. And then when I didn't know, he kind of chuckled again. He goes, "That's even better. You still don't know who I am, do you?" I go, "No, all I know is you're a pretty cool guy." And I had a great conversation for about 4 hours with you. And the fact that we were in a crowded room and we were in a bubble, that was pretty interesting. And he goes, "Yeah, that was." And that was the first and only time. And I've met a lot of people that way, where that was the first and only time, you know. Jimi Hendrix. I met him once, had an amazing connection with him for about an hour, and that was it. And then I met him a couple more times when he built Electric Ladyland, and the guy who was funding it for me said, "Hey, there's this kid who works at the Fillmore Ice, go ask, Bob Goddard who he is. His name's Al, I think. You need to get him to be the electrician." So I did. You know, and my major thing I did there was to make sure that place was grounded. I mean, there were other technicians, but I put in the power and the lighting and the outlets and that kind of stuff, and grounded. You know, everything that was going to be the recording had its own power. Nothing was on it other than it. And I met him twice while I was doing that, but that was it. Then he died. And, you know, so I met a lot of interesting people in that same way, where it wasn't like, "Oh, I want to know you." No, it was, I just kind of stumble into them. And I still have that in me. But, I'm kind of hidden away. I'm like up on a hill, with JB there. And JB Job, you know. Okay, let's see what else you guys saying. Married a lot until he found, let's see, Mae West, Gary, Carrie. Yeah. And we talked about that because by the time I met him, I had married once and I had 4 or 5 really substantial girlfriends, meaning I could have all 5 of those women wanted to marry me. I mean, they really just wanted to be married and have kids, and they didn't want some boring guy. And we had a great relationship, and okay, and I had just gotten within those 5 women. That was for about 4 years, and I wasn't ready to get married again. Right, and it wasn't until about 2 years later, after that, after Carrie, 6 years after I got married, divorced from my first wife, that I met my second wife, and she hated the church. She hated kids. She had herself fixed. She hated people. My second wife. Only reason we were together, she liked me, right? But she didn't want to get married. She didn't want to mix our business anything. And we were going to do anything with each other, it was because we wanted to, not because some institution mandated it. So I cared, loved her enough to say, sure, no, it's cool, let's do that. So that was my second wife, who really wasn't my wife legally, but kind of legally, because I think if you're with somebody for 7 years, you are common law. But anyway, you know, so that's how I meet people. I meet them when that stars crossed. And my whole, that's, I got paid for 30 years to look at trends, stars crossing. So that's what I'm best at, looking at these things. And that's why I'm seeing this window of opportunity to really have humanity step up and do something amazing, or not. Because we've been in this place before, and humanity's been on this rock for at least 1 billion years. At least in this, at Homo sapiens sapien. Now, you go to a textbook, they won't tell you that, right? I mean, textbooks tell you zip. Textbooks tell you lies. It's like Thucydides. Someone asked, Thucydides was the daddy of a modern written history. Up until then, it was basically cuneiforms and guys like me, griots, telling the story, like Plato and Euripides and Sophocles. And so they said, so Thucydides, what's history? And he said, his story is whatever the Romans pay me to write. And it still is. The Roman Empire is still running strong. It's just been rebranded about 100 times since, 300 BC, AD. So, we're still in the, that's why the Nazi Third Reich, the First Reich was Roman Empire. But it's more like, First Reich and then 1.2, 3, 4, 5, and then the Second Reich, which was the Holy Roman Empire, and that was like 2 all the way to the Nazis, the Third Reich, and that's where we're now. We're at the corporate state. We're at the corporate fascist state. That's where we are now. We're not democracy. We have no free speech. Because no one cares what we say. We can say all we want. Right? Look, there's only 4 of you watching. I'm no threat. But I am a valid resource, boys. I need a job. I want a good paycheck. Right? Fund our Humanities Artist Trust International. Fund our Institute for Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technologies. Fund our Traveling Video Art Circus. Fund our Freely Inquiring Society, because by creating an understanding within the construct of love's co-creation, you, the hidden hand, you, the powers that shouldn't be, you, the sock puppets, you can stay in control. And guaranteed, right now you're holding on by your fingernails, right? And you're thinking of the business plan of wiping out 98% of the human race. Now, that never worked out well. It's happened, at least 20 times that I can tell. It never worked out. You guys always got washed away with a flood. So, no matter how many hidden islands or underground bases or whatever, you're the most susceptible to loss. Like Blake said, when the center collapses, all else fails, right? And the folks who are on the outside, right? Me out there in the deep green, like, I got water, nice place, nobody around me. All this all the last spring, summer, and fall, I pretty much survived on eating berries and green stuff that grew in the forest. That I just kind of went around with a little basket and snipped with my scissors and washed off and ate a salad. Ate a nice balsamic. Right. Pre-speech is as good as long as it fits with the man's point of view, which is fine. My little thing is fits with the man's point of view. Because love's co-creation has created everything, Lucifer included. Dragon always goes, "Oh, you hate Lucifer." No, he's our brother. He created this illusion of a universe. I can't hate him, and because there is no bad or good, because everyone's responsible for what they do. So, that's why reincarnation kind of works. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, you got to keep coming back, relearning the lesson over and over again. And if you keep digging yourself into a pit, it just gets worse. So that's why I try and be nicer and nicer and nicer, because I'm getting closer to, the end, on the bottle of milk, the end use state. I'm getting closer to that. Yeah, I'm keeping my body awake. Yeah, I'm still can still. I mean, my eye doctor can't believe the process they do to my eyes is only supposed to enable your eyes not to get worse. Well, my doctor said, because I get this process because I enamored myself to him, so he put me on his, lab rat status, and so I get it, because otherwise the process costs like $3,000 a pop. And so I get it, but I have to go through a lot of tests, which is great for me. He tells me the little things he hooks my eyeballs up to. It's pretty amazing. I've learned more about neuroscience from him than, again, what are my 3 rules? Doctor, do no harm. So none of these guys do I let do any harm. 2, I only get involved if I can get a positive outcome and I can protect the innocents and get them out of the way. And 3, I only get involved if I can learn something. So anyway, last time he did the procedure, on my 9th procedure, he goes, you are one of 2%. I said, what's the 2%? He goes, not only is this keeping you from going blind, but it's making your eyesight better, and that's about 12%, but you're part of the 2%, meaning your eyes are getting so much better that in a few more things, you probably won't need this process anymore. Your eyes will be fixed. And this process wasn't designed to fix your eyes, just to keep her from going blind. So that's where I'm at, it's all about making the best of what you got, right? And this life isn't the whole thing. But the better you make your life in this life, the better whatever's coming next is going to be. And the more conscious you are of what it is, when you do die, you won't just get sucked up into the reincarnation Ferris wheel and be spat out as another mud puppet. You'll have more of a choice because your free will be sharpened. And that is what I'm trying to do with the cadre, to sharpen your free will. Get that pencil sharp, right? And in that process, so I'm not, John's all about, no, I'm not making any money. Well, I don't make any money on this except for the few nickels you guys send me, which is, I really, really thank you for that. And again, you want to send me anything, Western Union, just, get a hold of me. Send it to ADMARTINO in Roanoke, Virginia, and send me the tracking number, and then I can go and get it. And that works very good. You can do it from your phone with your credit card, and more better than Patreon and all that kind of stuff, because I have no idea how to do that. I mean, a number of people have sent me, oh, you just do this, this, and this, and I've tried, and I can't even get the apparatus to accept what my Gmail account is, unregistered, I'm just, I need assistance. I need a little cadre, I need the band together, to take it on the road, and I'm talking to people who might want to fund this, but hey, I'm telling you guys, really, the big bucks, the hidden hand, the, powers that shouldn't be, all of you sock puppets. I'm your dude. I got a track record. You know me. That's why I'm still alive. That's why you haven't offed me. You keep me around just in case you might need me. Well, I think this is the time you need me. You know, and the cadre, we are a trained force. With the shock troops of love's co-creation. We're here to serve, right? So, because we want to put the carnival back together, and you understand the carnival. It's been around before Mesopotamia. It's got a magic all its own. I mean, that's why people love, what are those Renaissance fairs? That's the carnival in its Renaissance festival form. But that's it, you know. And one of the things the powers that shouldn't be have done has hijacked the human race within the construct of the national security state. And it is not just the United States, it's a transnational corporate motif. And Russia and China and Japan and everybody is part of that motif, right? Hey Jane, what is it when message retracted? What happened there? Did you hit the wrong button? You didn't want us to hear what you had to say? CDB oil. Yep. I take that. They sell that at I have a friend of mine who's an herbalist, and everything that's legal, he gives me things that are past the sell date, but we both know that those dates are meaningless. Certain herbs will last. You keep them, relatively dry and not too hot, not too cold. They'll be there for a long time. So anyway, I have all that. One thing I do, a friend of mine sent me this stuff called Carbon 60, and that was pretty good stuff. And my friend can't find it. And so, anybody can get any of that my way, that would be great. What else can I say? Oops. Elbow. Okay. I do that all the time. Oh boy. So my favorite way of imbibing is edibles. I got a great edible story for you. I'll leave you with this. So it was about, I don't know, 10 years ago, and I'm living with the Rasta guys in Port St. Lucie, right? And it's a very, it's like the Lower East Side in the 1970s, late 70s, early 80s. And, there was it was like Beirut, gunshots everywhere all the time. The cops never showed up. And the Rasta guys had their own little compound. And within that, there were not a lot, but a number of white artists who basically had their thing going on, right? And so I had a number of friends, and they bought nice houses that were nice back in the 20s, and then the Depression came, and then the 50s and 60s and 70s came, and then it was the hood. But they had a nice big house, and in Florida everything grows, and they had amazing gardens and a fence around it, and even though the junkyards were all around it, they had these amazing places. So I was staying at this one friend's place, and we were, and so it was nice. I kind of lived at the, the Rasta compound, and I was a guest of my friends when they wanted some entertainment. We'd hang out there for a day or two. Anyway, so what was the story I was going to tell you? Oh, yes. So I was down in Florida, wintertime, and I would get calls from my, desperate lawyer clients, right? And so this guy goes, "Hey, I need you. I have this contract. I can't. I really got it done. Blah 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 blah. Next week, and I'm sending you, email. I had no computer. I had no email, but my friend, who's an artist, he didn't either. But he did have a friend who was a lawyer, and that person was a friend of ours. We had known that person from the days when I lived in Boston in the way early 70s and 60s. And so, oh, I'd love to see her. Sure, she's retired, da da da. So we drove to the other side of Florida, the West Coast, and we drive in, and I'm supposed to have a meeting with all these people in the afternoon. And so we get up early, and we drive to her place, and it's a gated community, but I mean really gated, high gates. You can't see what's going on the inside. And so we go there. We push her button. She gets and she opens the gate, and we drive through. And it's all these old people, like between nobody's younger than 70, and they're all naked. It's a nudist colony. And so, you know, and I'm nearly driving into things because I was not expecting this. And so we drive up there, and they're all like, it was an old trailer, community. And we drive up to her trailer, and they got tennis courts, and it's really watching old people play tennis, and they got nothing holding stuff together, and gravity is flinging different parts of their bodies in different ways. Whoa. And there were a lot more women than guys. Maybe 20% guys, 80% women, right? So there were a lot of women and just a handful of guys. So if you were a guy and they were all the girls, they were like giving you wolf whistles. And I normally don't have that experience. Anyway, so we drive up to her place, and she meets us, and I've known her for years, and I see her totally naked, and it's like, oh, I don't, this is like not a memory. I want to, please. Anyway, so she goes, get used to it. If you want to use my computer, just come in here. So I come in there. She has a nice pot of tea, and she has this little plate of cookies. And so, I eat one cookie, and I go, wow, this is really great cookies. And so she goes, my computer's in there. She goes online, and she gets the thing. She goes to my email. I never really use. This lawyer set it up. She clicks it in and downloads all the documents I'm supposed to read. So she brings in a pot of tea, and she has the plate of cookies, right, and a brownie, and she puts it there. And so I, read everything, make notes about it, and basically, say, okay, I'm ready to go. And she walks in and she goes, you ate that whole plate of cookies and that brownie? I go, yeah, you're only supposed to eat one. That's why you didn't tell me not to eat them. What are they? She goes, well, the cookies had LSD in them, and the brownie had hash. She goes, you should stay here and not have to do anything for the next 2 days. Well, I was heading towards Miami, and I was going to be put in a fancy hotel and stay there 3 days and negotiate. I said, how long should this stuff last? And she goes, oh, about a week. I mean, you just dosed yourself severely. And so I go, well, I got to go to this. She goes, well, you shouldn't drive. And she goes, I'll call up my friend Madge. She told me she wanted to go to Miami today. So she calls up Madge, and Madge drives me to, the hotel. And Madge isn't on the planet that I'm on. And she can drive. Me, I'm seeing, unicorns float through the air, and I'm like, whoa. Anyway, so she takes me in, and she's wearing clothes, and she checks me into, walks me into the hotel, checks me in, and so, they got the room for me, and the bellboy takes me. I said, I think I need somebody to take me up to my room, so takes me up to the room, and then I said, buddy, here's a phone number. Can you call this phone number? So he does, and it's the guy I'm working for. I go, okay, I'm at the hotel. Can you come and get me? And you need to come and get me, meaning I can't drive. You need to come up to my room and walk me down to the car. And he goes, anything wrong? I said, I just feel a little off, and I don't want to drive. can you do it? I said, I think I can do it. You know, I read the stuff. I think I can figure it out. Anyway, so, it starts around, I got at the hotel around 1. The meeting started around 3. And what I told the lawyer was I wanted these people to stay there for 12-hour shots until so I could like wear them down. And so I go in there, and I don't even know what clothes I'm wearing, and I'm just like sitting there, just like how I look right now, but way fatter. I was weighing maybe 560. I was like, went out to here on either side, right? I was like, I'm a third of the guy I used to be. Anyway, so, and I'm wearing basically the same kind of clothes, just really homeless guy kind of clothes. And I don't remember a word I said. And then, they take me back to the hotel. I spend the whole day, evening, watching. Had a whole bunch of TVs. I kind of put them all together and watched like 7 TVs at once, and it had jacuzzi in the thing. And I went from the jacuzzi to the shower, to the jacuzzi to the shower, then got into the bed, and luckily it had 2 beds. This room that had 2 queen size beds. Anyway, went from that and then got in the bed, got to bed totally sopped because I didn't dry off. And then, back and forth, and turned the heat way up. It was like, 70 outside. I turned it up to 110. Anyway, and then, I got a few taste treats from room service, and around 11, they came and got me, took me back, went for another round. And I'm not as totally whacked out as I was the first afternoon, but still I'm seeing unicorns and, thinking that I'm on Saturn. Anyway, long story short, third day, everyone signs the contract and everyone's patting me on the back and saying, I don't know how you did it, but that was brilliant. All those things, I don't remember a word I said. Because you said things that just made so much sense. It was so clear. It made me realize, and everyone was going, it made me realize. And I was like, I had not a memory of anything I said. So after everybody was gone, and the desperate lawyer says, let's go out to dinner. So, yeah. So we go out to dinner, and then he takes me, and we have it in the hotel, because they have a really nice restaurant. And then we go to the bar, and we're snifters and cigars. It was a cigar bar. And then there is this, and it was kind of on top of the hotel, had a great view, and we're out on the balcony, and he goes, so you're still stoned, aren't you? And I said, huh? He goes, well, the first afternoon, do you remember the first afternoon? I got, no. He goes, well, you told me that you were tripping, you told me that whole story, and that you were like on another, and that, and the only thing you kept saying was, I just don't want to fart or vomit. I just don't want to fart or vomit. And after about half an hour of you telling me that, I said, well, just stop saying that and just listen to what people have to say. And when those really pearls pop into your head, just say them. As long as it is, I hope I don't fart or vomit. So that's what happens when you take substances and you have no idea that you did, and then you have to go do something that people think is important. And he said, you're just really lucky, buddy. And I said, that's right. That's all I got is luck. He goes, because I was in there and you were saying some pretty amazing things. But I could tell the minute you said them, they weren't even in your mind anymore. But no one twigged the fact that you were stoned out of your mind, because none of those people did stuff that I did when I was in college. They're all little farts, and they never, the strongest thing they do is whiskey. And they just thought you were some kind of guru. I said, well, yes, you are. You're Sensei Al Bob, but so you just got to watch it. So that's my last story for the afternoon. Try some ketamine. I had a girlfriend who was a, what are the people who, when you're in the anesthetist, the person who put you on the drug while you're in the operating room? they kind of make sure you stay alive. They watch your breathing. And she was one of my students, my meditative students. She wanted to learn what it was all about on that level. And then we became sweeties, and boy, she had the best bag of tricks. And she liked me because I was a explorer, but not somebody who did drugs. Yep, anesthesiologist. Thank you, Jane. I can barely pronounce it with the four teeth I have in my head. I can't whistle anymore. The only way I can whistle is breathing in. That's it. But out. So, yes, buddy, I tried everything in a controlled environment with a doctor, and that's right. So, but around here in the really rich schools, they snort OxyContin or shoot it, and then die, and then bring themselves back with what's that drug you keeps you from overdosing? And they take ketamine too. And I have friends, in the DEA around here who are really upset because the people who are poor get arrested, but not these rich kids. And these rich kids are dealing and transporting, and because their parents are lawyers and rich people, they don't even get touched. I think I'm in your same category, but I'm over drugs mostly. I don't do any. But somebody gives me, a nice bong hit, not a problem. Nitrous oxide, that's, I go to the dentist that has that. Narcan, thank you. Yep. So there are kids around here, really rich kids, who overdose to the point of dying and then take Narcan. It's like, and like I said, they transporting, selling heavyweights, and they don't get touched, where the poor kids do. It's kind of what it is. And these are all symptoms. They're not the cause of anything. They're symptoms of the issue, right? And again, so I'm not probably going to do another one of these for a day or two, or maybe I will, and I think maybe 2 p.m. may be my new 7 p.m. Because I'll be in the library if I'm doing it, right? So, or in the morning, because I'll be in some restaurant. But most reasons why I leave the school really early is because I just can't. It upsets me so to watch John put himself through that day after day after day, no matter what I suggest or try to get him to do, or and when we went to that Mysticon thing, that was a great opportunity. There were 1,000 people there. There were a good 600 people who were artists, movie makers, musicians. I mean, it was an amazing thing. I tried to show you a little bit of it, and he could have, I could have been. He said, "Where were you?" Well, every time I tried to be with him, he kind of would mosey off, right? He was like, lose focus that I existed, and then he blamed me for not being there. I mean, that's kind of, like this morning, he blamed me for using the toilet downstairs, not the one he uses, but the one down there, and that I didn't close the door. Well, it was like 6 a.m. Didn't expect him to come down and watch me, but such is life, right? And so go back and watch my past ones. So say we all. I appreciate that. I love that. And any kind of little gratuity in the mail, or Western Union, or any way you want to do it. Or anybody, spring is coming soon. Anybody who wants to come to the Deep Green and hang out, and there are a lot of nice campsites. It would really, if you had your own car, you could go up and do, because there's loads of waterfalls and rivers, and sailing, and all kind, and 2 big college towns within 30 miles of me. I mean, big ones that have lots of interesting stuff. And we go there. We could experiment on trying to get the band together. So, and then if anyone, all you have to do is, all I need is somebody with a weed whacker, right? And I got the rest of the tools. Weed whacker is the one little thing I'm missing, and I don't want to mess with it. But if you got one and you live in America or Canada and want to drive across the border with your weed whacker, and you know, and I only need it done twice, beginning of the summer and somewhere in the middle. And then we could do, we could do all kind. We could build a sweat lodge. We could do all kinds of ceremony. We could do a lot of interesting things. And like I said, they're within 30 miles of me in all four directions. And Asheville is only 70 miles away, and that used to be my town. And there's still loads of people we could go camp out on their lawn and have a good time there. So, anybody who wants to do that, I'm open for it. And especially if anyone understands the internet, so you could set up my platforms in a way that I can truly utilize them. And it might be nice to have a Patreon account or whatever those things are called. And I know they're all different kinds that are some are easier, better, not as much, whatever. And anyone who's interested in starting a 501c3 umbrella that we could run a lot of stuff through, and I've done it a ton of times, and it's amazing once you set up the right protocols for those kind of folks, like for the hidden hand and the powers that shouldn't be. They're ready, willing, and able to funnel money through you because they realize that you have access to I read you that thing. Go back to the beginning of this and that first 15, 20 minutes where I read that whole article of that woman. You should go look up her name and her books, and she's quite right on about everything she's talking about. Yep. Deja vu all over again. Actually, I do, but they're all in New Mexico. We'd have to go to New Mexico. That's the land of air balloons. Nobody around here. And my pilot friends are all way older. Like 20 years ago, I had a lot of friends in the Air Force and had access to some pretty hot airplanes and had their own. And when I was a youngster out in Long Island, back in the day before you needed a pilot's license, there was this airport that was falling apart. It was like built in the 20s and nothing worked. And I went and fixed everything. And it was mostly a glider airport. It had small Cessna airplanes to pull the gliders up. Anyway, the guy who owned the place, I rewired his everything and fixed his everything. And in trade, was he had this really sweet competition glider that had a motor in it that could take off. I mean, you didn't need a pull plane. So it was real cheap, meaning to get somebody to pull you up was, 10, 15 bucks a pop. This, just boom. And that plane you couldn't crash that airplane. For every foot it dropped, it went 30 feet. So it was impossible to put it into a spin. It just wanted to go straight. And if there was thermals, it was difficult to land it sometimes because it was out there in Long Island where they had more fields, more thermals, and it was a great glider place. So I learned how to fly in a glider, and I think that's the best way. Because I loved it. It was so silent. There was no noise, just the air. And I was like in this little seed pod. It was like super duper aerodynamic. The wings were like, 50 feet, and the body was like maybe 20, if that. Whatever the ratio of body to wings, that was the most premium. But you were kind of laying back, and the whole front of you, down to your tootsies, was glass. So it looked like you were in the air flying. It was the most, and it was so hard to crash that you didn't even take a parachute. I mean, it's really, buddy, I'm ready. Let's go to New Mexico. I'm your boy. Ooh, nitrous at 7,000 feet. Yes, I did that in Colorado. I had a dentist friend, and he lived in Boulder, and he had the hottest nurses, and he, we went up to, where was that mountain pass? It was like, 12, 13,000 feet. We just sat around doing nitrous. Have you heard of plasma ion science? Yeah, that's basically the science of anti-gravity. Because what you're doing is you're putting a plasma field on one side of the mylar film and not on the other, and thus you go up. Kind of like an airplane, right? Kind of like a balloon. Except the balloon has a gas that, you know, is lighter than air, so that's why you rise. But I mean, anti-gravity is actually quite simple. Like I said, you can do it with some mylar balsa wood and a 9-volt battery. And if you would go on YouTube and say, anti-gravity, gravomagnetic propulsion, show simple demonstration models. There's quite a few folks out there that do it, and they basically all come from the T. Townsend Brown school, but he's just one school. But they're all the same. It's really quite simple. And that's what's such a. All of this science is quite simple. Meaning, if your Sensei Al Bob, has has grokked it and has played with it for the last 30, 40, 50 years, anybody can, I'm not, you know, I'm a smart chimpanzee, but, and I've never, again, wanted to get read in. I mean, I've worked with all kinds of folk, but at that certain point, when the guys in suits show up, I'm saying, well, see you later, bye. Because your life changes. And, you go look at Stephen Greer and David Wilcox and the guy who's, Joseph P. Farrell, Linda Moulton Howe, what's his name? Oh, the guy who coined the phrase breakaway civilization is a historian. Anyway, all those people, they don't have a life anymore, When I was younger, I kind of wanted a life, These people do this 24/7. And, not so much for me. Now, if you guys show up, you want to start the circus on the road, hey, I'm ready to go 24/7. Because then it would be fun. It would be like doing that Mysticon, and that's why everyone does it. People organize it, dude, because it's so much fun, and they're so passionate about what they do. It's just the greatest, And it was so disheartening to watch John just crumple up, that he couldn't just hang with these people, because they're just people. Anyway, so it's almost 2 hours, and so anything mind-numbing or really important? I know it will be what in comment. Yep. Cannot see other cadres, but they're there. I get like 50 Gmails from you guys, from other people who watch it, who go, I'm stop watching TV and anything else, and I watch your shows like they're, when I'm doing the dishes, Yep. Yeah, like I used to say, I can't even tell what gender you guys are. Oh, it's 1 hour 58 minutes. At 2 hours and 2 seconds, I'm going to say I'll see you guys tomorrow, but probably not. But I'll see you at least a couple times this week. Right. Again, I have doctor's appointments tomorrow. So, yep. Because, it was pretty easy at the school, but now that doesn't work. And again, John has his fancy phone. He doesn't really need the internet, so he's not worried about it. And the guy who put it there, he's anxious about him. What can I say? It's all like, come on, give me a break. Let's just have a good time. And I keep telling John, let's go have a good time. Come on. But he can't. Okay, here we're running up on 1 hour, 59 minutes and 12 seconds. Okay, I'll see you around then. Yeah, just, put the old little bell on, and whenever I show up, I'll just keep talking until you guys show up. And go watch the past shows and get a hold of me at, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. Yep, I'll have a super duper most wonderful evening. You too, buddy. And like I said, come on, let's go to let's take a road trip. I'm up for a road trip. I need to get out of here. I'm like super JB cabin fever. Okay, we're getting there. It's 59 and 55 seconds. 56, 59. Co-creation station. Yep, that's it, buddy. 1, 2. There we go. See you guys later. I love you all. Catch you later.